They're just a complete fungus kind of, I'm going to take it over. I'm going to take over everything I can possibly take over. And they don't have built into them any dying off mechanism. So they might be even more prolific in the sense that they would be completely efficient. They're completely efficient in the sense that they would have nothing, there would be no crooked lines between consumption and reproduction. They would be completely devoted to merely that process of consuming and reproducing as quickly as possible. Because it was only because of the island Earth syndrome that the first life forms that we came from ever acquired a capacity to die. I mean, they had to do it because they overpopulated the planet Earth, no doubt. They covered every inch of it. They choked each other off, and they had to evolve a mechanism to control reproduction.
I think the fact that they've confirmed that even to the proteins all come to one source, because the other idea was, hey, maybe life was created a lot of times, or at the protein, the proto-life version, and they just like they meld together or whatever because of similarities or compatibilities, and then they conflict, and you only get the left-hand amino acids because of this kind of process. But they've just done these statistical analysis that show nope, it goes back to one ancestor, and that does hurt the idea that it's common, because you should see it. If it could happen in the first 5 billion years of the planet, then why couldn't it happen more than once? Why wouldn't it have happened on Mars when Mars was like that? And if those things can be spit off onto Earth, why wouldn't we now find at least one other lineage? And since they can be frozen...
Well, think about it too. Think about Mars. Let's say Mars did have life on it. Don't you figure that the life would be hard to kill? I mean, even if Mars transitioned environmentally radically, it would still be hard to kill the life, because we know that life will adapt. You know, it evolves. It evolves to these niches. I mean, human beings lived in the North Pole. I mean, things adapt. And life would have adapted to the new Martian environment. And so I don't even buy the argument that, you could exterminate or eradicate life merely by, reducing the atmosphere by a half or taking the moisture out of the atmosphere, because the life will follow it and the life will create it. And so I don't buy that argument almost, that Mars was actually sanitized.
I think you might expect more signs of it, if not even through surveyors, that with signs on the surface, at least in these and things like this. Of course, they're still going to look, and maybe it's receded to some little niche, and of course there's a lot of Mars we haven't studied, and we haven't gone deep underneath the surface. But yeah, I don't think we're going to find out.
But you'd think like, look at that stupid, look at that microbe. Look at that microbe that's able to do the dehydration thing. Okay, it's basically able to. It's a flatworm. Its closest relation is a flatworm, right? But it lives in this little insectoid shell, and it's able to completely dehydrate its existence. So it can dehydrate its cellular existence, basically. And so yeah, it can last 10 years frozen. It can take extreme heat because the shell it has becomes an insulator. It can take intense ultraviolet light because, yeah, it's not alive really. It's just hiding inside of its shell, which is really interesting. But anyway, I'm just saying, so look at the development of that thing. And I'm just saying on Mars gets enough sunlight during the day that you'd expect something chlorophyll-ish. Even if it only put its little leaf up at 3 hours a day or so, you'd expect to see lichen or something like it on Mars. That's all I'm saying is that I think that's a logical inference, that we see how life adapts, and you would think it would do something to try to capitalize on that environment. But whatever. Especially, like I said, when there's no competing life. I mean, when there's every life form on this planet that has a minimal existence merely because it can't afford to become food. I mean, that's a whole nother theory I have, but that's why, like, these funguses I found so fascinating, because these funguses, once they grow, they're just prolific. They'll grow, and this is like perfect little machine. A fungus is a great machine. It can eat almost nothing. I mean, it eats shit. okay? And it just grows. But why isn't it everywhere? Why aren't there mushrooms everywhere? Why do they only grow like there, and then there won't be any for, 100 feet? And to me, it's got to be because it's built into their mechanism not to become grass, not to become something that's food. Because as soon as they become prolific, then something else is going to eat them. But if they're rare, then nothing can become biologically dependent on them because nothing will be able to consume enough food to survive on them. And so I think that's, another mechanism that only happens to life when it's caught in a very crowded environment. And life in an uncrowded environment on an island is going to just take over. I mean, it's got nothing to compete against. I mean, it's going to own the territory.
Mushrooms, they have some like underground stuff. I heard there's some mushrooms that will be underground for like a mile, like connected over like a full mile, have nothing.
Yeah, well, they do that. The fungus is just, they're little rooty things, whatever. They're not really roots, but I don't know what they're called. But that's what I'm saying. See, part of their chemistry is like knowing that, okay, I've got the territory. There's only one mushroom allowed per 50 feet, and so the other mushrooms don't grow in the area that mushroom's growing in. Just so they don't become. But like I said, it's again. I think the argument is they do that because they don't want to become food, not because there isn't plenty of environment to exploit. I mean, why do they just, like I said, you'll see this beautiful huge fungus on a rotten log, and you'll say, well, why is it only on that one rotten log? And on that one area on the rotten log? Why isn't it eating the whole fucking log? I mean, they create a zillion spores. I mean, why don't, I'm just saying, it's just, there's every reason why they should be everywhere. And there's obviously something in their own genetic makeup that inhibits them. But they're not everywhere. How can you say that? Did you say, oh, they're everywhere? They're not everywhere. Why aren't they growing on my desk? Why aren't they growing on my fucking rug? My rug is a mess. All right, I mean, a fungus could fucking have a field day just living on my fucking carpet. Why isn't it doing that right now? There's spores all over the fucking place. Why the fuck aren't they taking over? And I'm still going to argue. The reason is because they've been genetically programmed not to become fucking lunch. They don't want to be somebody's cheeseburger.
What are you saying?
Because that's doom. You become you become food, you become exterminatable. So you don't want to be food.
You're saying that if they be everywhere, then they'd become food?
Yeah, then somebody would exploit them. Okay? I mean, anything that thrives, some organism will exploit it. Okay? An insect, something else will learn to eat it and feed on it if it becomes prolific. I mean, it's like grass. Okay? I mean, got mammals all over the place that just feed on this shit. Okay? But grass has a mechanism where it can protect itself. Okay? It protects its roots and it just gives the mammals enough to keep them happy, and it survives that way. So it's found a way to do it. But in most cases, unless they have that kind of strategy, yeah, they're going to die. Okay? If they're food, they're going to die. So as soon as something becomes able to eat you, okay, you've become vulnerable now. So if some parasite finds human beings particularly yummy, I'm just saying that's a threat to us, okay? Because now it can thrive on eating us, and we have to create a defense against that. And I'm just saying we're much better off not being food.
It's actually true with the fungus that are so opportunistic that they can grow really fast. They can grow pretty much anywhere, but if they did that, yeah, they would expose themselves. It's part of it. Or for that matter, they're having this thing with wheat, this wheat rust. It's maybe going to wipe out all our wheat. I mean, this is what the scientists studied, and they're studying the wheat genome and stuff for it. But in nature, that doesn't happen because you don't have waving fields of grain. You have little stands of it, and they're all genetically different enough that rust would take one out and the other one's fine. And they're not so close together that they're all related closely, or that it's even as easy for the spores to go to the next plant. And yeah, limiting your population is definitely one of the survival techniques, and it's probably likely in fungus just because you're right. They pop up in one day, some of these, and yet you don't see them just everywhere. Because, yeah, something would decide, oh, they're everywhere? Great, I'll live off that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So that's part of the mechanism, you know, that just this is so malicious, and that it's even the living aren't trying to live too much. You know, they're just, you know, trying to live just the right amount. But I mean, the first life forms really had to face this dilemma of, you know, balancing reproduction and predation, and you know, because it was just so easy to do this. It was so easy to fall into that trap of thriving too much, just like the human race might be doing, where, you know, you just create too many people, use up all the resources, and then you all starve to death because the whole infrastructure collapses, the whole system breaks down. It's like an ant. You'd think that, like, ants are probably vulnerable to that kind of thing, you know, that they have to have a lot of mechanisms built in to keep the system alive. You know, because if, you know, because breakdown just means that you know, once a part of the system goes, the whole system crashes.
But like the idea of overpopulation or something, isn't it? You know, like, okay, let's say, you know, 10 billion people or 50 billion or 500 billion people can be sustained, but not 500 billion and one, then isn't it just that one person starves to death or something like that, balanced? And if there's too many people the next year, you know, some people die, but it's not like everything goes apeshit because suddenly you have, you know, half the population that's starving. It's just a.
But it does go ape shit just because it's more about a system breakdown. So that's the real threat of our overpopulation, is that if all of a sudden if you have too many people, then your resources are diminished, and you have, you know, huge blight, then that population will become a menace. Okay, and so you have political and wars and all the other stuff. The system breaks down. So that's what it's more about, is the system failure. That'll be the bigger threat. That'll kill more people. Will be the fight over the food, not the fact that there's not enough food, but the food fight is what will kill the human race.
Hey Gary, I gotta run. Nice talking to you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks and such.
Well, I don't know. I find it like pretty funny kind of conversation, I guess, about overpopulation. Or I don't buy the argument that we're overpopulated, or that there's something inherently wrong with people, or that there's a certain number, or at least that number is something that most people's calculations are connected to. Like, people would say,
well, do you think it's a problem? Do you think it's a problem that only 3% of? Do you think it's a problem that only 3% of the human beings that have access?
I don't think
Only 3% of the children are raised with access to the internet.
I don't think that internet is like a primary thing. I think that everybody on Earth should have access to their own.
I'm not talking about shoulds. I'm not talking about shoulds. I'm talking about what the real world is.
I mean, I don't know. You asked me.
You have to
about,
turn your fucking mic off when you're not talking.
I do.
Well, somebody's not.
But I'm trying to understand your question, like, because you asked me if do I think it's a problem that 3% have internet
Well, look,
access.
the problem is quite obvious. There's a limited number of resources on the fucking planet. You're saying it doesn't matter how many fucking people you have, and that there's the resource limit isn't the reason why people are living in poverty. Well, the fact is that people are living in poverty because there is a lack of resources. They all can't have running water. They all can't have hot water. They all can't have a heated house. They all can't have the comforts that a certain percentage, a tiny percentage of the human race enjoys. All right, so that's the fucking problem. All right, if you had 2 billion people on the planet, then a much higher percentage of those people could live quality lives. Okay, when you have too many people, then you have too much demand on resources. Resources become too expensive. All right, and then everybody's life is diminished.
Well, I don't think that's not factually correct. It's like, and if you look at the budget.
Fuck you, fuck you, fuck off. Not factually correct. God, what a stupid fucking counter argument. That's not factually correct. You look at the budgets. I mean, come on.